God. It's 4 o'clock already.
I know.
We gotta do the thing.
I know. Tell me about it.
I need my pluggy in.
You're plugged in here. That one's plugged in. Just make sure it goes all the way in.
Huh?
Make sure it goes all the way in.
It's all the way in. Let me start it.
All right.
Oh wait, I gotta turn off the volume.
This is a pretty song. I guess I should turn it down so we don't get copyright infringement.
That's right.
And your computer's still on. I'm gonna do an ID.
Do an ID
and then it'll be up to you, baby. Have we got a treat for you guys this week?
Also offers weekly doctor appointments. They're open 7 days a week, 11 to 7 weekdays, and 11 to 5 on weekends. For more information, find Collective Elevation on Facebook or by phone at 565-5850.
Go ahead.
Okay, time for Post-Orthodoxy, a show about changing our minds.
With your hosts, Doc and Hanzi CVA.
Realize that maybe what they believe about reality isn't all of reality.
What?
I know, right?
We're on a mission to have a better time with more people more often.
But the question is, how do you get there?
Post-Orthodoxy explores strongly held beliefs, how those belief systems divide or connect people, and what might be found beyond those reality levels.
Keep calm. Don't lose your head.
I've got a piece of chocolate here with me because I got anxiety about doing this.
Welcome to this neighborhood, neighbor.
Indeed, welcome to Post-Orthodoxy, and thank you so much to Citizen DJ Dark Sevier for that fantastic intro you've created.
Oh yeah, we've only got a little time left. This is like the intro that will go on the podcast.
But we have a musician creating original music for us for the podcast.
Right, so this is a prototype.
We just borrowed this music off the internet and some voices from beloved friends of ours across the globe.
Right, so that's going to be our standard podcast opener.
Woohoo!
So we have that now.
And then we'll have this little moment to tell you all what we're going to be talking about for today.
We don't have that much time.
We're going to be talking about panic, community building in new ways in the new reality, and solutions, including those of the meta-modern kind, featuring our friend Hanzi Freinacht, the Swiss philosopher, and those of the link that Facebook won't let you post kind of solution.
Oh, the link that can't be named.
And that's all you get.
That's the thing.
That's beautiful. I'm going to be really excited to hear that at the beginning of our podcast when we finally get them online.
Speaking of, we have a lot of announcements concerning the program. First of all,
we have a lot of announcements concerning the radio station in general.
You're listening to Post-Orthodoxy with your host, Ainsley Sevier. And
that's me.
And your Citizen DJ, Dark Sevier.
Mm-hmm. And you might be listening on a real radio at 102.5 FM in Butte, and if you are, there's no way that we can thank you, but we thank you. You might be listening on ButteAmericaRadio.org. Right now there are 10 people listening, and we hope you guys stick around for our 2-hour talk show on into the last Daniel and Patty Sunday Smackdown for a couple of weeks from 6 to 8 p.m. Or you might be hanging out with us on Twitch. Today we have the Thompson brothers hanging out with us on Twitch today, or on Facebook, and thank you so much to those of you that are tuning in on Facebook. We are streaming on these video platforms because we know we're part of a community, and our desire is to share thoughts and ideas and questions and comments with the global community, and to all be exploring the borderlands beyond reality bubbles together.
Yeah, we're doing that. I guess there's a lot of house cleaning we got to do, or stuff that I want to do. One, this is going to be our last radio show on the radio
for a couple weeks.
For a couple of weeks at least.
At least until the first Monday of April.
Right.
which will probably get extended as the Butte Silver Bow Health Department deems it worthy to keep certain high vector locations like the radio station closed to the public.
Right, so the radio station will be manned by Bob, our artificial intelligence avatar.
Who is named after
Bob Lyons, the legend.
One of the founding DJs of KVMF.
Yes.
And Bob is not just an Autobot, it's an Autobot full of music chosen for you by the KVMF music directors.
It's curated. It's
curated music of all varieties.
It keeps with the eclectic theme of the station. So a lot of the DJs, I think all the DJs aren't going to be here for a couple of weeks.
Some DJs will be able to send their shows in via MP3, but not everybody.
If you tune into 102.5, you'll probably have a good time. Even though it may not be the regular good times that you used to having, but there may be surprises along the line.
Yeah, who knows? If you have a favorite DJ who does a show that you love every week, try reaching out to them through our Facebook page and see if they're planning on continuing their radio show during the hiatus. It might be really encouraging for them to know that people are out there listening.
So I think that information, we are going to continue to do Post-Orthodoxy from our residence.
Right.
So whether we will produce it for the radio or we will just do it from our residence, stream it live on Facebook like we normally do, Twitch and so on.
If we have the correct audio equipment, we could record the conversation and then send it to Clark, who could air it for us. It won't be at the regular Post-Orthodoxy time slot, but our live streams will still be at the same time slots, 4 to 6 p.m. Sundays and Thursdays.
Yes, we're going to keep doing the show.
Of course, this is what the Post-Orthodoxy movement is about, and the other movements that it is associated with, such as Metamodernet and the Intellectual Explorers Club and this new one that you found. We're gathering all sorts of communities over the globe of people who are coming up with complex solutions to complex problems and ways to interact and build new communities with each other in times of crisis.
Right, those organizations we've associated ourselves with, I don't know if they know that yet, but we're building bridges daily.
We've associated ourselves with them. So I guess, we're in their Facebook groups.
Yeah, I have information from both of those fronts that we can get into as we move along. The folks with the Intellectual Explorers Club up in Canada, and Hanzi Freinacht, who's in his cabin in the mountains.
Is it a cabin? I kind of was imagining like a Swiss villa with a sauna and I don't even know. Maybe it's a cabin, I don't know.
Ski cabin?
Philosophers don't make a lot of money.
I don't know, it looked like it was drywalled on the inside, so it's not ye olde rustic.
Right. Speaking of philosophers not making a lot of money, we've recently launched an effort for people who appreciate the work that we're doing to support us.
So much work.
And if you're curious about all of the stuff that I wrote to make that Patreon page interesting, you can find us on patreon.com/postorthodoxy. I wrote a lot of really funny stuff.
Are you going to make a link in the comments?
I will, yeah. You can just read it over coffee and get a good laugh, even if you don't become our patron.
I wasn't paying attention. Where is it? Where do we find it?
Postorthodoxy.com/ Patreon, patreon.com/postorthodoxy.
And then you'll see our page.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And you can read all the funny stuff I wrote because I worked a long time on it.
Right. So now we have a web page, which is Better Time. betterti.me.
It actually rolls off the tongue really well.
Better Time, but just with a dot.
.me, not .com.
Exactly.
And that'll probably be my next mega project, is working on making that web hub more of a valuable web hub for people that are interested in joining the community and being a part of the process.
So first we have a website up, and then we have the Patreon up, and now we're working on the podcast page so that we can start
you can listen to us on the road.
All the shows.
That's right. And we sent out a call for some voice actors to do really interesting bits for us that some of you heard in our intro today. That was really exciting, piecing everybody's voices together and representing the community in the intro to the show.
Yeah, that's fun.
So what are we talking about today, Dark?
So many things. There's a few things. I saw Matthew Marsalek made a post that I thought was worthy because we do we're in the midst of this coronavirus reality. It's sort of occupying us.
It's going to be a longer reality than a lot of people want it to be.
Right. So not to, we've been talking about a lot in terms of new information as it's coming out, perhaps trying to figure out discerning good information from bad information. There's a post that I'm going to put a link in the comments of the Facebook discussion. It's a running list of the latest hoaxes spreading about the coronavirus. So misinformation business. I thought maybe we could talk about that for a second.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea because the internet is a really wonderful place of information, and one of the things that we've been talking about on Post-Orthodoxy in recent weeks is meditating on ways to build bridges to members of your community that don't use computers or the internet, because those people, where are they getting their news? Where are they getting their information on how to stay healthy? How are they reaching out to someone if they need help with something? A lot of communities are doing really interesting things like putting a green heart in your window if everything is fine, and putting a red heart in your window if you need help with something and don't have a way to reach out to people. And while the internet is a very invaluable resource that we're lucky to still have working right now, there are also a lot of bad habits of sharing things that seem to make sense without actually looking into whether or not it's viable or factual.
Well, one thing I noticed, and I tend to get these things from my older friends, they are the forwarded messages in Messenger or in some other thing, but the forwarded message that says, this is from a friend of mine.
So I know it's good.
And then they have this text. About whatever the thing is. Right now it's about coronavirus. In general, what I advise is when you get one of those texts that are forwarded from a friend, just cut and paste a line and put it into Google.
Yep.
And there
Snopes is a really valuable
just
place.
taking a line of text or the main text and putting it into Google will give you an idea of whether this is valid or not valid. Same thing, when people say, have you seen this missing child? And it's like 12 years old and the kid was found 2 weeks later. But people are still looking for the missing child like 12 years later. Like it's worth, I think we have a valuable tool to be able to spread important information quickly. And it's stuff like that sort of gums up the works. So a lot of the fake information has been coming in the familiar form, which is the forwarded text from a friend. There's another...
Much as we would like to believe that our friends and loved ones always fact check things before they send them forward, we're all busy. We're all busy and we're all worried. And oftentimes, nobody really takes the time to double check something or to Snopes it, especially if it sounds like something that they want to be true.
Right. Well,
I really want to think that I can gargle salt water and kill coronavirus cells in my throat before they reach my lungs.
Right, that's also something being debunked. Right. That's been passed around. It's that image of the blue head with the little coronaviruses in its throat. Another thing, fake cures. We have snake oil salesmen today in the form of evangelical television preachers.
Even worse than gargling salt water, it's people trying to make money off of your desire to be healthy.
I was saying that if you just give him money, you will not get sick. And one of the preachers oiled up his hand and put it to the camera and told everybody to put their hands on the TV and they would be healed.
That should be so illegal.
Should be illegal. So I would say if you're of a religious bent and you see a religious folk on TV telling you that they alone for money can solve your problem, I would say maybe do a little research.
Pretty sure Jesus overturned the money tables.
Yeah, that seems a little. Just be careful if you're of the sort of magical thinking bent and you really want to. If you're afraid.
We're in a time of extreme scarcity, and we are still also in a time where people have more abundance than they realize. There are more currencies in the world than just financial currencies. But if you are in a position of having financial abundance, even during a shutdown, there are ways that you can use your finances to benefit people and benefit yourself without just giving it away to someone on TV.
Right. There was another emails. There's some emails going around from HR departments, health organizations that are basically virus things. So be careful if you don't know.
Double check.
There was a viral post claiming that your stomach acid would kill the coronavirus if you drank it out of water.
Which should be counterintuitive to most people because drinking tons of water, I've recently learned, waters down your stomach acid, which makes sense, which is part of the reason why I was having so much gastrointestinal unfun times because I chronically drink water. Speaking of which, it's way up there and I can't reach it.
Right.
I chronically drink water, and basically the doctor I went to see was like, you need to not drink a ton of water while you're eating so that your stomach acid can actually do its job.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, drinking a bunch of water and stomach acid cure for coronavirus has been, I'm told it's false.
But again, you can use Google also.
Yeah, just check it out. We can do it. We can all Google it.
Don't just trust people when they say things aren't true either.
Right. There's a 500,000 viewed YouTube video that advises inhaling hot air from a hairdryer.
Because coronavirus doesn't like the cold.
To cure the coronavirus, or it does like the cold.
Right. Coronavirus loves the cold.
Inhaling hot air will not thwart COVID-19. If you're one of those 500,000 people that watch that video and are stuck on an air dryer right now, put the air dryer down.
Maybe do one thing that can be really helpful, if you're looking for particular information online, it might be kind of hard to find that particular information online, but if you do like a 10 gentle search, so maybe go and search what is the effect that hot air has on lungs. And you can do, it might not necessarily be bad for you to be breathing hot air dryer air, but it might actually be really damaging for your lungs, and that's something that you can go and Google to kind of like perpendicularly fact check whether or not hot air from a blow dryer will cure the coronavirus.
Yeah, there was another WhatsApp post that claimed 4 people with COVID-19 got worse after taking anti-inflammatory drugs. Apparently it's not true. But if you do have to take anti-inflammatory drugs, maybe do a little research.
Now, this is a really ongoing discussion.
It's going on,
and it includes ibuprofen, and also things that you should think about is other things that are anti-inflammatory, like garlic and ginger.
Right.
Is that something that goes under the umbrella of don't take anti-inflammatories, quote unquote?
Right.
Or do they just mean pharmaceutical anti-inflammatories? What is it that an anti-inflammatory actually does in the body? And mixes badly with what the coronavirus does in the body. These are things that you can Google and find out.
Right. There is a World Health Organization official post that's basically saying that ibuprofen is safe, and that's if you're into the WHO or whatever.
So World Health Organization, that's a pretty legitimate, publicized, vetted place to find that information, right?
Unless you're a QAnoner and then they're a part of the world takeover.
Right. You could be a person that studies conspiracies in order to find out the truth in the world, or you're a person that studies conspiracies and so you don't trust anything ever.
I've just recently come to the conclusion that a lot of these conspiracies are fan fiction for apocalyptic times. They're really fun.
Well,
I really enjoy them.
Look, my former sister-in-law has posted a really great list as a librarian and a lover of sci-fi of apocalyptic books that you can read right now. You don't have to try to dig into the deep conspiracies of where coronavirus came from and make you distrust your neighbor's God and the country. You could just read a really great zombie fiction by Mira Grant instead. Like, there's actual great apocalyptic fiction out there.
Right.
That's not making you hate everyone.
It's more exciting when it's live action and you think
in
you're
my real life.
Yes.
Choose your own adventure. What else is on your conspiracy,
let's see here.
Health and wellness list?
Oh, it goes on.
Man.
It goes on. There was a hoax falsely claiming that emissions from crematoriums in China could be seen from space. That was debunked.
Crematoriums, as in like.
So the story is that China has this mystique because it censors its internet a lot. So some people are saying that 500 million people have died in China.
We can't really know what's going on there because we can't trust them. You know who else you can't trust? Your government, because guess what? The president has recently told states not to release actual numbers of how many people are losing their jobs because of the coronavirus, because they want to keep the stock market from crashing further as people get scared about losing their jobs.
Right. We had this little coronavirus list. It's the the coronavirus site update on what's going on. And United States is now moved up the list. They passed Spain, Germany, and Iran. No, Spain and Germany. And now they're just behind Italy and China for a number of confirmed cases.
And I'll share that link in our live stream chats. It's NCOV 2019, like novel coronavirus, NCOV 2019.live, LIVE. And that's, those numbers can seem anxiety-inducing or panic-inducing or sad. And it is tragic that people are having a hard time and dying. But bear in mind the difference between 100,000 people versus 1 million people versus 1 billion people, and that there are 8 billion people on the planet, and that these numbers are rising, but they're rising because we're having broader access to testing equipment. So a lot of people that test positive are completely asymptomatic.
Right.
And what we want is to be able to test as many people as possible so that if someone is carrying the virus, we can quarantine them and let people who are not carrying the virus go about keeping society functioning.
Anyway, I like to watch. I check it on the site every morning just to see how things have jumped.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was watching the numbers creep up, and then suddenly the numbers in the U.S. went up by 32% in one day, and I think it is. Don't quote me, but I think it is due to what you just said. It's finally there's some tests coming around. So.
Well, and that, you know, various other countries around the world are donating test kits to the U.S. because we don't have enough.
Right.
Which is really wonderful, and we're really grateful. I am personally really grateful to other countries who are reaching out to the U.S. and providing us with life-saving equipment, even though we've been bullying people for 100 years.
Kind of jerky. Yeah.
Which I know is not everybody's perspective, so that sentence isn't going to land for everyone.
Yeah, it's my perspective. I'll share that with you.
Yeah, that's nice.
So there's that. That's the coronavirus rumors. I made a post of that in the comments there. So that's something to be aware of. There's a lot of information, and we're all glued. A number of people that I know are glued to the screen right now, looking for new information.
And I know a lot of people.
It's kind of like
watching a
soap opera.
Oh.
Like what's going to happen today? Because it's this beautiful nexus of an insane political season plus this unprecedented mobilization of procedures that have never happened before in this country in anybody's lifetime that's still alive right now. So I think all those things are, it's like a soap opera. You tune in every morning and there's a whole other crazy story going on. So that information is happening. I've started to tune in to a few different channels. I've been joining a few different Facebook groups since the home quarantine. We mentioned earlier the Intellectual Explorers Club. This is a group of folks that have a Facebook group, and they have regular meetings up in Canada. I've been following them because they post some interesting stuff. There's a guy who's associated with them who, his name, I just friended him recently, but I've been reading his stuff for a while. His name is Jordan Hall. He's a Stoic. You know what a Stoic is?
Somebody from Greece a long time ago.
Exactly. Yes.
I think this is we're gonna waffle in and out of problems and solutions, and I think this is an important solution. Especially, I've seen several friends who are like, guys, I'm going off of Facebook for a week because I can't take it.
Can't take it, yeah.
You have hundreds of friends, maybe even more than 1,000 friends.
Yeah.
There's a function on Facebook where you can click to see most recent posts as opposed to top posts. And bear in mind that the Facebook algorithm is designed to keep you online as long as possible.
Right.
It'll show you whatever you interact with most. So you can go into your timeline and find friends who are sharing positive tips, who are sending patterns for how to sew face masks for nurses, who are posting cute cat videos to boost everybody's spirits, or poems by people who are talking about how we could all come together instead of being at each other's throats during a time of pandemic. You don't necessarily have to be on the internet swallowing all of the horrible news.
Endlessly scrolling.
Or off the internet altogether. You can take the internet as a tool and craft it into something that is beneficial for you and your mental health.
So that's kind of what I wanted to share is this this guy Jordan Hall that I was talking about, he is a proponent of Stoicism, considers himself a Stoic. Now I'm going to read the dictionary definition, which I think is really funny. I'm going to read the second definition first, which is a member of the ancient philosophical school of Stoicism.
Thanks.
That doesn't help much.
Thanks.
But the first definition is a person who can endure pain or hardship without showing their feelings or complaining. So that's, I think, the more...
Yeah, I've never thought of stoic as a very positive thing. It's mostly repression.
Being stoic is being calm and almost without any emotion. When you're stoic, you don't show that you're feeling, and you also accept whatever is happening. The noun stoic is a person who's not very emotional. The adjective stoic describes any person, action, or thing that seems emotionless and almost blank. It's a Hellenistic philosophy, I guess. Zeno of Citium in Athens in the early 3rd century BC, that was his gig. It's a philosophy of personal ethics informed by its system of logic and its views on the natural world. So it's more than just being, emotionless. According to its teachings, as social beings, the path to eudaimonia, happiness or blessedness, for humans is found in accepting the moment as it presents itself, by not allowing oneself to be controlled by the desire for pleasure or fear of pain, by using one's mind to understand the world and to do one's part in nature's plan, and by working together and treating others fairly and justly. So that's what this guy's all about. And I recently friended him on Facebook because I've been seeing his name kicked around in some of the circles of things that I'm reading on the internet. And he made this post and he linked it to a website called the Stoa. It's the like our name, the thing is sort of divided up. It's thestoa.ca.
The Stoa.ca.
Yeah.
Stoica.
The Stoa.ca, yeah.
Is that .Canada?
Yeah, probably that, because these guys are Canadian.
Right.
So that is where they're setting up the sort of old world, ancient idea of, it was a covered portico where the Stoics met to philosophize. Now it's a digital space, so they have dates and times on the page.
Online. For online Stoicing.
Yes, so they have dates and times, and you can sign up. So it's only about 12 or 15 people or so. I guess they have room for it. Maybe 20 people. And then all the screens are on the page through Zoom or something.
Everybody's video chat.
And then people are doing that gig. So I'm going to make a post to that page.
Eudaimonia, Chad Oakrish says, eudaimonia. It means energetic, self-fulfilling, thriving.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Like euphoria.
So,
like pandemonia, but eudaimonia. Euphoric craziness.
Very good.
Energetic euphoria.
Okay. I get it now. Jordan Hall. So before he posted the link, he made this little post that I'd like to read because I thought it was something worth talking about on the show, and we'll put this out there to our listeners if they want to participate in the dialogue. Highest priority. The next wave that is coming that we can do something about is the mental health crisis, aka spiritual crisis. If you have capacity, and in particular, if you have meta capacity to address this wave, get on it. Meta equals building platforms that allow these kinds of things to scale and become widely available. A, supporting people and being able to stay sovereign in the context of now.
So what does stay sovereign mean? Because I don't think a lot of people are sovereign even outside of a pandemic.
Right. Well, maybe stay sovereign is an interesting choice of words. Maybe that's his crew. Maybe they're all sovereign. I don't know.
Well, I think I explored the word sovereign a lot in the beginning of getting out of the cult I was raised in, because the kind of Christianity I was raised in You were just supposed to do the right thing that God and or the church and or your parents told you all the time.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with whether or not you thought you knew what the correct thing to do was, or with how you were feeling about what you were doing. You were just supposed to do the right thing that God or the Bible told you. So there wasn't any sovereignty in that. I wasn't queen of Ainsley Land. Other people were kings and queens of Ainsley Land. And I think the idea of staying sovereign or becoming sovereign within yourself is to become the queen or the king of your own kingdom, rather than letting other people or ideologies tell you what to do or how to behave.
One definition of sovereignty is the full right and power of a governing body over itself, without any interference from outside sources or bodies. In political theory, sovereignty is a substantive term designating supreme authority over some polity. How's that?
I like that.
So supporting people in being able to stay sovereign in the context of now, things like meditation, stoicism, decentralized dance parties, person-to-person grief counseling, group calls, or just having relationality. Et cetera, et cetera.
Stay in your body, stay in your mind, be the one in power over your own well-being.
Yeah. So
that's lovely.
B, supporting people in being able to quote unquote do in the context of the now. In particular, education. Lots of people can take this time as an opportunity to learn, ideally, learn how to learn, which is kind of like what we deal with a lot on this program.
Well, that's something that I talked about a lot growing up. I grew up 24/7 homeschooler, so I never went inside an institutionalized school. We were taught to teach ourselves. A lot of people who are faced with suddenly being their child's primary educator, having never done that before, think that they are ill-equipped to be their child's primary educator because they were never trained to be a teacher. But one of the best parts of homeschooling, this U.S. movement, the modern homeschooling movement, because people used to do it all the time. But one of the best parts about the modern homeschooling movement is that there's curriculums out there that teach your child how to teach themselves so that they can acquire the information themselves. It's not that you need to know sciences to teach your child the sciences.
Self-generating education versus just consuming rote
facts
memory
from
facts,
someone who is regurgitating facts from someone who is regurgitating facts.
Right, so these guys are all about this kind of thing of actually, I don't know, using the higher functions of the unit.
Right.
I'm going to finish this. It only goes a little further. C, supporting groups in this context, particularly families. Unfortunately, our old lives kept us distanced and separated. Kids at school so overburdened with bull data that they never had free time.
Overburdened with pointless data.
Yeah, that they never had free time. Parents, same, just replace school with work. So we don't have habits or skills on how to suddenly be together. And of course, now we are isolated in our homes amidst a huge crisis. Choosing addiction will be common. Netflix and Facebook likely foremost among them, and hazardous. Help people find ways to effectively choose health.
I have several friends who are struggling with sobriety.
Yes.
People who have been on the wagon for weeks, months, and years are struggling with sobriety when faced with isolation.
Yep.
Like, you can't, maybe you're a lonely person and now you can't even go to social gatherings and try to make friends or get a date.
Right. So this guy's saying this is an opportunity for a massive upgrade in our individual and collective capacity for meaning. So for him, he's linking to this Stoic page, which we linked in the comments there. It's called the Stoa. I guess if you Google the Stoa, you can probably find it.
Stoa.ca.
Yeah, so that's the way he's doing it. He's doing philosophy with a group of other interested people that he's never met before, some of them, I'm sure. And they're gonna work on their minds together.
They're gonna get together and support each other and brainstorm other ways to support other people as well.
So musicians are doing that. Musicians are certainly just opening up and doing concerts from their house. I really enjoy seeing that versus the cat memes going around over and over. I like the cat memes and all that, but like knowing that you're, like the promise of the internet to me as a kid who was pre-internet, the idea to portal into various rooms around the world was really exciting. And now it's happening. There's live streams happening all the time. Some guy teaching his cat how to play piano, whatever it is.
Right.
I find that really fascinating, and I think it's almost like a game of hide and seek to be able to search that platform to find the things that feed you versus the things that you're just sort of snack fooding on, to find the real nourishment, because there's all kinds of people doing all kinds of interesting stuff. And I like having this platform to take some stuff that I've been getting into and then maybe share it out there.
Right.
So that was one thing I thought was interesting. I like his call to action and focusing on mental health when other people are really concerned about the toilet paper.
Yeah.
I think he's operating, it's nice to hear another perspective of what people are looking at.
We can be concerned about something else. Speaking of things coming up, this next Thursday, you can watch a live stream of The Good Slipper being produced by the Orphan Girl Children's Theater here in Butte. And they will have a way for you to basically buy a virtual ticket and live stream that performance.
Oh, to help support the thing.
To help support the theater in a time when theaters can't be supported. And I'll share that link in our Facebook group.
Great.
So from anywhere in the world, this broadens it. From basically,
right.
The kids have been rehearsing via video rehearsal.
Oh, geez.
And they're going to, I don't know if they're going to do a digital performance or if they're going to get together but keep 6-foot distances during the play. I'm not sure how they're doing it.
Wrapped in saran wrap.
Wrap them, yeah, put them all in face masks, like The Good Slipper, but post-apocalyptic style. And then coming up in Missoula.
Talk about bubble realities.
Ooh, literal safety bubbles.
Yes.
In the next weekend, we've got the Missoula Sequester Fest, which is going to be a 12-hour live stream marathon. You can pop into at any time, and musicians and performers are signing up for slots in that marathon. And they'll be putting their tip jar information onto the live stream so that you can still support these musicians who can only make a living if people are allowed to get together in crowds.
Yeah, it's really nice that you can watch something like that. And also, you know, we can gripe about Facebook. I'm not a big fan of maybe the more nefarious aspects of Facebook, but as a platform, having been somebody pre-platformed, like where you have a platform where you're like, hey, I can start a watch party with my friend who I know will like this music, but he's in Alaska. So I really love the ability of us to be able to drop in and see each other.
Yeah.
And share it with our friends. I think it feels like the tool has been built. And this is one of those occasions where we actually get to see what the usefulness of this platform can really be. And then maybe we'll then maybe we can nationalize it.
Nationalize.
Yeah, just make it like a phone.
Well, we already had a lot of crowdsourcing.
Globalize it, I guess. I don't know.
Right, globalize. We already had a lot of crowdsourcing communicative efforts. And more people are just going to internet sourcing than before. So you can find yoga classes online. You can find painting classes online. You can, I shared a group in our Facebook stream that is called Actors Assemble, which is a Facebook group where various performers are going to be hosting classes and live readings where people who are actors can keep their skills up. Warm-ups, techniques, play readings through this group. And those are people that would normally think they have to find a way to get together in the same place to do these things.
Right.
And you don't actually have to do that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Now what?
Oh, I'm not sure. Tammy Strong says, I've been social distancing for years. A bit of a professional isolator. Live streaming connections are exciting and I think healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a great time to take some personality tests. I'm serious. Like, a lot of people might be panicking because they can't hug anyone.
Not like what kind of pot of pan are you? Like what color decides your ancient?
No. Not clickbait personality tests. Yeah. Not which Disney princess are you? Although
not that.
No, like 16 personalities, which is a test. The Myers-Briggs personality test. Tests about figuring out Are you an extrovert or an introvert? Are you an introverted extrovert? Are you an omnivert? Are you a person that needs to be around people to recharge, or a person that needs to be alone to recharge? And then once you learn these things about yourself, you can find ways to help yourself stay sane.
Oh yeah, self-actualize.
Self-sovereignty.
Self-sovereignty.
You can get to know yourself and then get to know how to keep yourself healthy during social distancing. Which somebody used the term physical distancing, which I like better because we're actually being way more social.
Physical, yeah, right.
People who use the internet, which thousands and thousands and probably millions of Americans don't use the internet.
Yes.
But people who use the internet are actually becoming very social with each other in new ways.
Yes, I agree.
Yes. I'll share a link to the 16 personalities test for anybody that would like to start there.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
It might.
So if you just Google 16 personalities, you can find it. Right?
It's so easy. And it takes you through several pages of questions. And
be careful. Be careful when you take that test. When you get to the thing where it's you, screenshot it because it has a weird feature where
if you go away from that screen,
if you decide to go back, you can't go forward, and you have to take the test all over again.
Right. So when you get your results. Screenshot your results.
Yeah, screenshot immediately.
Because you can't go and find your specific results again somewhere. Dinah McLeod says, hello Dinah, and thank you so much for tuning in today. So we've talked about vetting information, especially when it comes to health.
Yeah.
You can use Google. And do some cross-checking and find out whether or not the tips and tricks being passed around are actually healthy and useful or safe. We've talked about acquiring and or maintaining self-sovereignty, which is you getting to know yourself and becoming the king or queen of your own kingdom. Yeah,
just being aware of the potential mental health impacts of everybody rearranging their lives suddenly.
Yeah. It's okay, and I'm going to say this every show during this crisis, we don't like the idea of a crisis being a long time, but this virus is a part of our world now, and it's not something that you only catch one time like the chicken pox. That might be anxiety-inducing for a lot of people, panic-inducing. They want to go to the folk festival, they want to go on their summer vacations, they want to plan their wedding and be able to have their grandma in attendance. We're in a new reality that it's not going to go back to pre-coronavirus reality.
No, it's like September 11th. Everything was different after that.
Everything is different from now on, and you can get the coronavirus again afterwards. This is why it's important to focus on immune boosting rather than hyper-sanitizing your entire life. Sanitization is important. Keeping distance is important. Washing your hands is important. But you can't literally sanitize everything in your entire house and your fridge and wash your coat every time you come home. It's important to prepare your own body to be healthy. Maybe this will be the start of a new movement of better health for everybody on the planet, because the best defense against the coronavirus is your own immune system defense. And boosting that immune system is going to be the most important thing over the next few years.
It's really interesting to watch how the various people that are hitting the wall start to have their things happen on the internet. So for example, DJs, performers, musicians were like the first people I saw splattered all over the internet live streaming.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing was the gym rats.
The classes, the yoga teachers.
The gym rats, the gym's closed. So now the gym rats have their things where they're all showing their in-house routines, like climbing stairs upside down, or like, so
here's how I stay fit without all the
equipment. This whole stream of fitness weirdness, and you're like, wow, that's it. That is its own world. Like,
this is what they do. This is their passion, and suddenly they can't do their passion.
So it's interesting to watch how, like, the waves of people who are finding their expression.
They're moving their community online.
That community is like getting this community bubble pops out. I'm like, oh, there's all the artists that don't have gigs this week. Oh, here's all the people who can't go to the gym this week.
Yep.
It's really interesting to watch those waves
of cultures.
Watch through.
Kevin Olson says he's been really paying attention to his home exercises so he can stay in shape.
Yeah, good.
And for those of you who do have access to the internet, there are a lot of really fantastic free tutorials and walkthroughs and classes on YouTube.
Yeah, we were going to do the yoga thing.
It's March.
About the yoga thing.
Every day. We talk about it every day.
Yeah, haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Been busy preparing important information.
Preparing to be an information hub for the apocalypse. But I brought up all of that scary, scary stuff about how now we live in a coronavirus planet.
Okay.
because I want people to take a moment and acknowledge within themselves that you might be having anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
If you have chronic nausea or a bunch of acne or more aches and pains than usual, or you're losing hair or you can't sleep very well, these are all symptoms of anxiety. Anxiety is a mental problem that causes physical breakdown. Anxiety lessens your immune system. You might be panicked, you might be scared, you might actually be going through other phases of grief, like rage. You might be enraged that you are out of control of the virus. You can't control the virus, and you can't control whether your loved ones will get it or not, no matter how much you sanitize. Acknowledging those emotions and that awareness within yourself is the first step towards being able to go online or talk to a friend on the phone and find ways to help yourself.
Yeah, that stuff can creep up on you. It's like when you eat a pot brownie. You forgot that you ate it. And
right.
45 minutes later, you're decided that it's
maybe I should have another one.
No, yeah. Like that anxiety, you don't just say suddenly, wow, I'm feeling anxiety often. It's a creeping thing that may come in for a day or two or a week before you realize that you're acting out of anxiety. You haven't caught that it's the puppet master now. So, it's important to have ways to check yourself to figure out if we talked about it before. Are you operating out of anxiety? Like you can actually say, why am I doing this? Is this a fear-based thing, or is this a thing that's nourishing me that I want to do?
Right.
Or is this something I'm avoiding, something I don't want to do? Like asking those questions can be really useful in helping identify, because like stress is normal, but it's really bad for the immune system. So if you're trying not to get sick, it might be really good to start figuring out how to identify stress.
Meditations.
And move on from that.
For those of you who are listening to KBMF who don't have access to the internet, the easiest thing to do is to sit in a chair with both feet flat on the ground in front of you and both hands calmly resting on the knees in front of you, and take a deep breath in for 4 seconds and hold it for 4 seconds and let it out for 4 seconds.
How often do you do that?
I actually do that a lot.
Really?
Yeah, because I have a problem remembering to breathe.
Oh.
My ADHD expresses itself usually in that I can do many things at once. But if I am ever actually focusing on something, everything else just shuts down. So I'll be working on my computer and like taking tiny sips of breath.
Oh yeah.
Just the bare minimum to keep me alive, and then suddenly can't figure out why everything's aching. Because I haven't been getting oxygen.
I think if you're doing a lot of perpetual scrolling, where you're just going and scrolling and scrolling,
is your chest moving when you breathe?
It's kind of like what happens. I think it's kind of like what happens when you get drawn into a movie. Where your breathing will change. You'll start to like have anxiety for the lady being chased by the werewolf or whatever. We can do that by being online, scrolling. We can start affecting our breathing, affecting our, a lot of things about our physicality gets altered in the continued scrolling.
Yeah, and that's one of the top things for I can't spell. That's one of the top things for immune boosting, actually, is to your body has to move.
Right.
Reduce your stress, so self-soothe the animal in you, and you have to move around. You have to move around. Your lymphatic system doesn't work if you're sedentary.
We're not locked down.
No, we're not locked down. Some people have to stay in their houses.
We're not supposed to be rubbing our hands over everybody's faces or anything, but we can totally go for a walk. And the weather's great today, actually, here in our neck of the woods.
Yeah.
It's kind of shocking because when the weather is this nice, this place is usually crawling with people, but I guess because the usual destinations aren't there. Like,
right. People don't just go for walks for no reasons anymore.
To the bar.
Well, I don't have a dog and I'm not going to the bar, so why am I going for a walk?
Right. It's eerily quiet out there on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. So yeah, outside is still an option. I think that's worth taking advantage of. We're coming up to the top of the hour, is that correct?
Yeah, 4:49 p.m.
Do you want to talk about what's happening in the second hour?
In the second hour, so we're going to, we've made the intro to our show. We haven't made the intermission little jingly bit.
No, we have a composer in Los Angeles working on it. Frank.
That's such a fancy thing to say. Pascal.
Frank Pascal is working on our...
He's a composer for the Zulu Summer documentary about KBMF and the Zulus in Ngoma. And he's also a composer for Life Below Zero,
Yeah.
which is a National Geographic show. So that's a pretty cool connection to have.
So we said, what was the...
Please make it pensive but hopeful.
But hopeful, yes. Yeah.
Like electronic music.
Yes. So yes, next we had a phone interview with meta-modern philosopher Hanzi Freinacht from Geneva, Switzerland. We spent about an hour on the phone in an interview and getting to know each other a little bit. I like what he's working on with his books. He has a book called The Listening Society and another book called Nordic Philosophy.
I'll tag Metamoderna in our Facebook chat so people can find it.
Right, and that's 2 books in a series of 6 that he's working on. And he's related to a guy that I found in Germany, Joschka.
Heifetz.
Yeah, Joschka Rohr.
Oh, not Joschka Heifetz?
No, Joschka Rohr.
I think Joschka Heifetz is a piano player.
Joschka is working with this organization called the Co-Creation Foundation, which is all about this sort of new, I've been talking about parallel institutions for a long time. We got to find ways to make the old things that aren't working for us anymore obsolete. We have to obsoletize them.
We need new systems.
We need new systems. So the Co-Creation Foundation, the meta-modernism folks, I really like what's happening with the Intellectual Explorers Club. They're really kind of unique expressions of this desire to climb out of our history and do something else.
Right, to be forward-focused instead of past-focused.
Right, so we talked to this guy for about an hour, and maybe it will be the first of several, but it was about an hour, and it's too much just to run.
It is.
Because I want to
break it down.
I want to dissect what happened.
We have a lot to learn, and our listeners will enjoy unpacking the various philosophies.
Right. So by his own accord, philosopher Hanzi Freinacht will go on 15-minute tears.
He warned us ahead of time.
Yeah. So, I guess we'll start in the beginning. We'll just start where we started with the conversation that we recorded for the show. And in the early part of the conversation, he just launches into the difficulty of telling us why we are interviewing him.
I think that's a great place to start. We had a pre-call with Hanzi, and he was like, so you're going to have to tell me, I'm not even going to try to do the accent, but he's like, you're going to have to tell me, like, okay, you have to stop talking about that and make your point.
Right.
And we did our best to just kind of sit and listen because we have plenty of time. We can chop it up into little pieces and chew it up over the course of several upcoming shows.
If I was the slightest bit distracted, I would go off on endless side trails from everything that he was talking about.
Oh, yeah. No, we had so many questions.
But it was nice to be present and just let the philosopher pour it out all over the place, because it is a roundabout. He's sort of setting up data points that will then be connected by lines that will then maybe, if you are perceptive, will find a shape. It's not like...
How do you start from scratch?
Yeah. So
suddenly philosophy.
We'll start with suddenly philosophy. He didn't even get to defining what metamodernism is or why he's doing it.
But not in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, so maybe when we come back after the top of the hour, we'll just introduce the beginning, and then we'll stop it when it's too much.
I'm gonna play a little bit of a Katsunyama song in a very cheerfully gentle way of reminding people that you are the sovereign over your own nation. Whether you have been able to be that in the past, you have the chance now and every day moving forward to become your own sovereign.
Yeah.
And you have the ability to self-doctor your own anxiety, and you have the ability, that is not to say that some people don't need to go talk to somebody and get help and get extra measures to be able to deal with anxiety. But in general, especially when it comes to like just pop-up anxiety about things like a worldwide plague, like you can go on Google and find breathing exercises and meditation and learn to identify, maybe you shouldn't be clenching your butt so much, just relax, those sorts of things. Take time to let your body relax. But anyway, Rock, Paper, Scissors by Katsunyama is basically like, life is what you make it. To an extent.
we'll do our legal business, and we'll come back at the top of the hour until 6.
We will, and then it'll be the last Dan and Patty Sunday Smackdown for those of you listening on a real radio, 102.5 FM. KBMF is going to go automated.
Yes.
Not off air, just automated for a couple of weeks. Our automated system, Bob, who's playing a bunch of music chosen for you by our music directors, is going to keep the radio alive for us, and occasional DJs will be sending in MP3s of their shows, so that you know, we don't know who those DJs are going to be or if they're equipped from home to make recordings of their shows, but we'll be back. We're still a big part of the community.
Yeah. Thanks for playing.
Yeah. Stay tuned. All right, and to find a link for our lovely folks on
the Facebook?
Facebooks and the Twitches.
Thanks for tuning in, folks.
Because this is such a cute song, and I want you guys to be able to listen to it. You can open this in a new tab.
Those things are so damn loud.
They're super loud. I'll just turn them down.
Yay, thank you. Is that me?
Yeah, we'll just turn the headphones down for a little
That
while.
turns me down too, though.
It's okay, we'll turn it back up later.
Alright.
It's all fine. This way, you guys can listen to this cute song, open it in a new tab, and listen to it later, or listen to it now if you like. We got a couple of minutes. It's such a cute song. So sweet. Alright, I'll be back. Briefly, baby. Are you going to entertain our listeners?
Yeah, what else? Do we have comments unanswered?
People haven't been very chatty today, but that's okay.
Right. We have, Kevin Olson said, in Oregon, I understand that too many people have been crowding the beaches. Yeah, that's the thing. We don't have a beach to crowd, luckily. For better or for worse, I should say. But yeah, it's nice to walk the dogs with less traffic. Yeah, we're at the studio till, this is the last day that the studio's open. We're going to be doing the show from home Thursdays and Sundays at the same time. The station's going to go automated, and then I guess they're going to explore the possibilities of various folks producing their shows at home and sending them in the regular slots. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to play out, but there's going to be a dramatic drop in the 70 folks coming in and out of the studio every day or every month. Yeah. Evno, how's the radio station in Hawaii? Is the station open still, or they close it up? So.
Yeah, we should listen to Evno's show on Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's like.
Are you going to talk about the gerrymandering and the at-large council members?
What does that mean? I mean, gerrymandering is a problem.
Oh, there's a push to get rid of the mayor.
In Butte?
Yeah, and reduce the.
How does Evno know about that?
I posted an article about it.
Oh.
They want to get rid of the mayor, reduce the number of city council seats, which means changing all the districts and having a city manager, which would be somebody that's a job, like a plumber.
Right.
So somebody who's not from Butte would come into Butte and start telling us how to run our city.
Try not to be offended.
So anyway, that's the idea. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know enough about it to talk about it yet. I know that there are some people that are starting to use a lot of all caps in their discussion about it, though. Do we have an ID? No, I mean
This is
underwriter.
I'm playing it right now. And we're back. It's 4:59 p.m. in Radio Land. You're listening to Post-Orthodoxy. This is a radio show about changing our minds. It's a radio show about realizing what reality bubbles you're in and figuring out how to get out of it if you need to get out of it, or to be able to at least move freely between different mindsets if you want to.
Right.
And it's a radio show about having a better time with more people more often, getting to know our neighbors, and being able to disagree productively.
Yeah.
710 in 805 stepped away on Twitch. Be right back. I'm cooking some Cajun Alfredo chicken. So hope that sounds really good. I'm suddenly starving for dinner.
You are?
I'm so sad that we don't get to go to our beloved Sunday evening bar after the radio show anymore. I really miss that routine.
Right.
I miss. I don't like feeling hesitant when I hug someone.
Yeah.
There are certain people that I have had to interact with.
Right.
And it's kind of, I know you're like not supposed to hug anyone.
Right.
But like, I'm not gonna not give somebody a hug if they need a hug.
Oh geez.
But like, I also feel all
Dangerous.
the hesitance.
Yes.
And the like maybe shame.
Right.
And then I also feel sad that I can't just interact with everybody the way that I used to. I'm beginning to feel the squeeze as a person who is physically affectionate.
Right,
sure.
Right. So I had this Hanzi theme pulled up. Do you want to say anything about it before we play it? Hanzi?
Hanzi. So for those of you that are just now tuning in, and thumbs up from Michael McDaniel, we appreciate you listening. One for me and one for you. We are going to start listening to pieces of the interview that we did with Swiss philosopher Hanzi Freinacht. It was really fun having him join us on our show, and we're looking forward to intermeshing with the various philosophical communities on the planet as we all try to figure out how to help each other through the next few years post-coronavirus.
Yeah, this is not a clickbait kind of interview. This is the kind of interview where you might want to just like sit back, take your shoes off, take your medicine, and swim around in this for a second.
And keep Google open so you can look up terms. If you hear something,
Yeah,
we'll be looking up a lot of terms.
Right. So
it's okay if a lot of this is new to you. It's new to me, and learning can be exciting instead of threatening.
I'm just going to play it, and then eventually Ainsley's going to tell me to stop, and then we'll just do a little bit of this each week because it's a lot to break down.
Right. That's true.
I think as we do the podcast, as we move forward, we can do a interview in full after we've run through the series or whatever. But yeah, we're just going to play.
We can post the interview in full after we're done with the series.
We're just going to play this till Ainsley's eyeballs start to spin around a little bit. All right, Hanzi Freinacht.
Oh, you're going to have to go back.
Okay.
Pleasure to meet you, Hanzi. My name is Ainsley Sevier. I'm here with my radio partner. We missed his intro.
Yeah, welcome to Post-Orthodoxy. Thanks for calling in.
And thank you. The pleasure is on my side. I'm curious where this might lead.
Yes, me too.
I'm curious about you being isolated all alone in the Alps. Do you have enough tea?
Well, tea is all right, but other luxuries, there aren't too many. And most of all, they're quite expensive. To be frank, you have to walk for about an hour just to buy grocery, and once you do buy grocery, well, you have to be a bit choosy about what you get. It's not whiskey. Having lentils in a big luxurious house, and I can always warm my feet in the jacuzzi. But other than that, life is frugal. But I suppose that's conducive to good philosophical work and contemplation.
Right. We've been talking on our radio show that we were going to have an interview with philosopher Hanzi Freinacht. So for folks who are in our listening audience that may not have any idea who you are or what meta-modernism is, would you mind just giving us a little introduction into your work? Maybe with the two books that you've put out. You can describe those two books to start.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, the reason I wrote the books, of course, is that there is no easy answer to these questions. I mean, there are relatively easy answers to who I am. Okay, I'm a writer, philosopher, and sociologist. I live alone in the Alps, and I work very hard to put this philosophy out there in the world because I believe it can contribute substantially to helping us all together imagine the next steps to take as societies. That being said, the reason I wrote the books is that there's no easy way to explain a worldview, any worldview. You can boil it down to a few bullet points, but then it becomes meaningless, or you can expand upon it and go to any of the entry points, and then you will be, like the parable with the elephant, you'll be either be is sensing its tusks, or it's feeling up its tusks, or its legs, or tail, or whatever, or its trunk. Rather, what happens to people when it comes to worldview shifts, and I talked to you a little bit before we started the call. I know you both have this kind of interest, that you've both gone through dramatic worldview shifts in your lives as adult human beings, and so have I. And once you have started viewing the world quite differently, your old worldview seems quaint and weird and a bit bigoted perhaps, or just not very productive. You just don't want to live in there anymore. It feels like prison, or maybe not even a prison once you've gotten used to it. It just feels like I used to live in that little box. I came out of it. I'm in a bigger world now. I realize the bigger world I'm in now is also a box, but I feel I'm in a bigger box. And then you try to speak back to the old box that you stepped out of, like you climbed out of as were your own skin. And you have a new worldview and a new idea about who I am as a human being, a new idea about what society is, what's right and wrong, a new idea about what reality is. And these things intimately connect with each other, and they form a new pattern. And that the pattern itself, like the overall pattern of that new worldview, that's what we're talking about. That's what philosophy is ultimately about. It's not about one particular idea or one particular thing you can point to, or one object of the mind. Is the pattern of how the mind situates itself, and the body too, in reality. So what I do is I try to, it is one thing I'd like to compare it to is, imagine that we could travel back in time from today. Imagine that we could travel back to, let's say, medieval times, and was you, Ainsley, and Dark, and myself, and we are in Paris in the 13th century, let's say, and we speak French. So we walk up to people there, and we try to explain to them, okay, so in the future, people will have quite different values from what we have today, what you guys have today. They will believe in things that you would find heretical, which we can nevertheless see are more true and are actually more ethical in many ways. And they will know things about the truth, about how reality works, and so on. So it would be very difficult for us. Like, where would we start if we could, let's say, if we get to the king eventually, we get to the king's court, and we're still in Paris, or we get to the archbishop or some other powerful person, and they say, okay, I want to learn from you guys. I want to create a kingdom of the future. So where do I start? And I think we wouldn't know what to say. Okay, so we try to explain democracy, and then they wouldn't really like that. We try to explain, I don't know, secularism and freedom of thought and freedom of religion, and that would seem, heretical or evil in their eyes. We would explain science, and would seem abstruse and abstract and meaningless. And we would explain the mechanisms of growth of the economy, and would seem highly counterintuitive. I'm not saying that meta-modern minds walk around in today's society, freedom of religion, as big a gap or leap as a 21st century person who would be transported back to medieval times. But that's kind of what we're trying to do, at least. Try to, like, there's at least a smaller gap between the values of the future, and of course some people are going to get the values of the future before others, or have a vague intuitive sense of them, or start tinkering on them. So we're trying to download what are those values of the future, and then there are certain directions then that make so much sense that it's difficult to deny them. Certain directions that we as a society can and should be going towards, and we as humanity should be maturing into.
I really, really enjoyed that metaphor.
Which one?
His metaphor. So in his explanation of kind of what it's like to be a philosopher, or why do people go into philosophy, or I'm not even sure what the original, maybe you can remember, like what was I was dealing with some live stream problems there, but
Yes.
why did he start talking about us going back in time? And
I was talking about comparing when you go from a smaller world to a larger world, and the difficulty of talking to the smaller world that you came from.
Right. I think the three of us, at least in so much as I know Hanzi so far, the three of us are loving people, compassionate people, people that attempt to not be prideful.
Yeah.
Everybody has different skills. Everybody has spent their one precious life learning different skills and becoming really good at different things. I'm not really good at math, but I also know mathematicians who don't look down on me for not being good at math.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never met that mathematician.
Oh, judging, judge. I'll judge you for judging me. Yeah, so I think the idea is, and this is something that we're going to be talking about a lot, it's like everybody has different roles in the universe. Having a different role doesn't mean it's a lesser role. But we do need to use certain metaphors to describe progression. People can progress from being an amateur dancer to being a professional dancer. People can progress from being someone who does mostly physical labor to being someone who does mostly mental labor. Although that even of itself is a conversation to be had. Like, is one more righteous than the other? More advanced than the other? Mental labor versus physical labor. And I like that Hanzi kind of launched into a beautiful metaphor at the beginning of our interview, just talking about how sometimes when you leave a reality bubble and move into the broader universe, it can feel difficult to go back and speak to the people in that reality bubble and use words that they're going to understand. Because you've learned a new language on the outside now.
That's the allegory of the cave.
You want to break that down for us?
By Plato. Plato's allegory of the cave. Yeah, the thumbnail version of that story, which is what he was describing, is that there's a cave and everybody's lived their entire life in the cave. And they're kind of chained to a certain perspective, literally chained to a one direction of looking at things. And that one direction has a screen, and behind the screen is fire. And between the fire and the screen, there's a puppet show. Okay?
I thought it was that they're chained in the cave and they're looking at the opposite wall, and what they're seeing is shadows moving on the wall.
I'm doing it.
Okay, all right.
So they see the shadows, and like the smartest old coots in the place know the play. They know all the characters.
They're experts on that.
They can even probably predict what some of those characters are going to do before the young ones can, which gives them a certain amount of wisdom and so on and so forth. But then the idea is, let's say you somehow get unchained, and then you end up outside.
You crawl out of the cave.
You crawl out of the cave. Now, you've never seen sunlight before, so it's going to be a painful experience.
Painful.
Yeah.
New is painful.
Ouch, that hurts, right? And then maybe the sun sets, and then you can actually look around in the dark. You can actually look around and see the amazing stars and, you know, the plains around you, or the mountains, or wherever the cave was. And then you get to and then the sun comes up slowly, and then your eyes get to adjust a little bit. And then you're like, wow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I gotta go tell everybody about it. So you run down into the cave, and you're like, hey, dude, you gotta see what's going on out there. But his eyes are adjusted to the light now, and so he cannot see anything in the cave. You know how it is when you walk out of like a bright day into a dark room?
Right.
So, yeah, now everybody looks at him and goes, now, wait a minute. You were fine when you went here. You went out there, and now you're talking about all kinds of crazy stuff, and you can't see anymore.
Yeah, I think you broke yourself by going out there.
I'm not following you out there.
It seems dangerous to go outside the bubble.
It doesn't. You don't seem to be wearing it well, fella.
It's so fascinating that you're using this allegory, because I was trained in my very rather cultish Christian environment that I grew up in to use the allegory of Plato's cave for how we thought about people who didn't know God's greater truth. The way that Christians think, many Christians, the way that many conservative Christians, evangelical, yes, because I know people who love Jesus who don't think like this, but many evangelical conservative Christians, a large part of the country / planet, think of the God of the Bible and that reality as the ultimate overarching umbrella reality over all of reality.
All of reality.
And people that worship other gods or don't worship a god at all or have other opinions are just in denial of the true reality.
Yes.
Or they're just not aware that the God of the Bible is all of reality.
Right. Maybe you should tell them.
That's what's outside the cave, is the true God of the Bible.
Right.
Is Christianity, is the Christian universe. And the people in the cave are people who are either fighting against the reality of the God of the Bible being the God of all the universe, or people that don't know.
Right.
And we need to go tell them, even though it's painful, even though it's difficult, even though it's confusing, it's good for them.
So they're the enlightened ones outside that are going down into the cave. Right, I see.
Into the cave of denial or misinformation.
How convenient.
I think it's really fascinating that it can be seamlessly moved back and forth.
Right, because I grew up from that sort of chained perspective, and then I got literally out of the cave through some chemical yogas, and then suddenly I was crazy to the people, the smaller box that I had come from. Suddenly,
right, you seemed crazy to the people you came from.
Those people, yeah. So I always looked at the cave as basically the sort of mainstream modern consensus. The puppets. That's politics. That's entertainment.
Stay focused on this thing, like the movie They Live.
Like, you know, before the internet, like I knew I had these East Coast friends and they're nuts about stats. You know, they love sports and they know everything. They know their team, they know the stats of all of the players, and they adjust every week for the game. They know the history and the last time they won a whatever. Like that kind of stuff always boggled my mind. But it's like that is what the cave is to me, is like people who are really sort of dialed into the prescribed narratives, the prescribed stories, and then you can jockey for position over who can best predict the predictable play.
Right.
And then on Sunday, all that stuff wasn't interesting to me at all.
Right.
And then they didn't know why I was broken.
Kevin Olson says, I have often spoken frankly, and yet I am often surprised at the negative responses of what I think should be obvious and harmless. It is very much like the Plato's cave analogy, where someone goes out of the cave and tries to come back and describe sunlight to the people that have only lived in the cave their whole life.
Right.
The Matrix, he and 710 and 805 on Twitch both brought up that the Matrix deals a lot with the cave paradox.
Yes, right.
Leaving the cave and coming out into the quote-unquote real world is akin to physical birth, something that we cannot recall.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting because...
you don't get to climb back into the womb. It doesn't work that way.
Oh, you think that's what he means? I thought recall as in remember.
Oh.
Because I definitely remember all of the burden I've been doing to myself over the last 4 years.
Well, I think maybe it's really about...
You can't unsee sunlight once you've experienced it.
Yes, there's that. But it becomes difficult to remember what it felt like pre-sunlight. It becomes really thin and dreamy in the new reality.
I definitely experienced that. When I was doing my best to stay conservative Christian, stay a good big sister, stay a good daughter, stay a good wife.
Yeah.
And it kind of got to a boiling point, a pressure point, where I felt like Moses holding back the Red Sea. And all of my energy was going towards not doing all the things or thinking all the things that this version of Christianity told me not to think or do. And I had no energy left for being a real, alive, loving person. And after a breaking point, I basically said, I can't take it anymore. I can't keep using all of my energy to ignore the other versions of reality that I've experienced.
Right, it gets to be too taxing.
And so I let it go, and I said, okay, I am going to shift from my whole goal in life being to do the right thing to my goal in life being to do the right thing for me.
Right.
And it was like...
selfish.
This golden warm light just rushed back into me. Like I remember where I was standing in the driveway when I decided I wasn't going to take it anymore.
Yeah.
And I had energy, and I also needed to like sleep for a week afterwards.
Yeah.
But like I had energy and I had joy and I had hopefulness because I wasn't just going to be doing the same struggle until I died at 80.
Right.
You know, like, and I think I definitely observed and was really shocked and a little bit saddened to observe that the 5 years of my marriage kind of faded into a fog instantaneously.
Right.
It was like, I know I slept next to this man every night for 5 years, and we made each other thousands of cups of tea.
Yeah.
And had witty conversations and raised foster kittens together and went to museums together, but I can hardly remember any of it.
Right. I think that's indicative of one of those shifts that
So
he's
crazy.
talking about. That's what he's talking about.
Hanzi?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's these sorts of conversations are not extremely linear conversations.
Yeah.
Much of our life is spent having linear conversations from point A to point B, or my point versus your point back
Yes.
and forth on
Right.
like a line. But these broader conversations that Dark and I are getting involved in, and that we're hoping to bring our community along in involvement, are hard to talk about linearly. It's like we're going to go point A to point B sometimes, and then we're going to go X to Y sometimes, which is the up-down axis, and then sometimes we're going to go the forward and back axis, whatever that is. So it's like it goes from being a 2D conversation to a 3D conversation. We're sort of talking about Hanzi talking about
what Plato was talking about?
What Plato was talking about being a person trying to learn new things in the universe, and how learning new things about the universe often limits your ability to talk productively with people who are not learning new things.
Right.
And does that make you a snob?
There's a translation
And
issue.
does that make that other person less than you? These are difficult things that we need to talk about that I feel self-conscious talking about that.
I think there's stages to all that stuff. You know, it's not like if there's a billion steps and you are up one step on somebody will be. Like I think when you make transitions like what we're talking about, when you make a transition from worlds, from a world that was smaller into a world that was bigger, a larger perspective, greater possibility, whenever you make that transition, there's the same thing that happens if you move to another country. There's adjustments. You have to figure out the language, you have to figure out the customs, you have to figure out all your behaviors may need to be looked at differently.
Right.
And you may not be a gracious tourist.
A shrug
person,
in one
right?
country can mean something completely different than a shrug in another country.
Exactly.
In some cultures, it's considered impolite if you don't burp after eating, because it means that you didn't think the hostess's food was so good.
Exactly.
Like,
so there's when you're making these kind of crossings, there's a whole learning curve that has to take place. And it may not be, I think I see a lot of people who get out of fundamentalist Christianity and then become atheists, and then turn around and spend their time making fun of people that are stuck in the same thing that they previously were stuck in.
They just jumped from one bubble to another bubble.
And then they claim superiority.
And they see everything through that bubble now.
And then I think that there's various things. Like, I think for myself, I was like, look at those, first it was like, glad to be out. And then it was like, how dumb do you have to be there? And then it was like, how dumb do I have to be to not remember?
Wow,
Like,
right.
You have to go through these phases of being gracious about the differences. We live in this idea of a melting pot and we're all the same, but we're not. We're not all the same. We're all dealing with way different games than other people are dealing with. We're like, there's so many worlds within the world.
Well, and that's also something we were talking about on our Post-Orthodoxy sidecar on Thursday, is like, should everyone want to be able to be king if they could?
Yeah.
Why are we so obsessed in the modern US, at least, because I can't speak to experiences of people in other cultures, but why are we so obsessed with wanting to be able to be the same if we could? And I understand I'm speaking from a place of extreme privilege as a white person, although, I suffer from, being a woman and being poor, those sorts of things. But why? I feel as though we all remember reading those sort of iconic stories in grade school, the moral stories, the like Aesop's fables for the modern day, where you read a story about a Japanese rice farmer who is just content to be a Japanese rice farmer. He just wants to be a rice farmer. He doesn't want to go to new cities. He doesn't want to read a bunch of books. He wants to go out with his pigs or whatever. I don't know if they have pets like dog pets in ancient Japan, but like he's content to wake up every day and do the thing that he feels contented doing and go to sleep.
Yeah.
And we don't look down on that man, but we do sometimes look down on the idea that it's okay to just be that man.
To be happy doing what you're doing.
That Japanese
aspiration.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That Japanese rice farmer should want to be able to be king if he wants to.
King, yeah.
Or emperor, whatever. You know, as a general metaphor.
Yeah.
You should want to be able to have upward mobility desires. Even though he's just a humble Japanese rice farmer in the ancient times.
Yeah.
He should be free to have upward mobility if he wants it.
Now wait, who's this voice that you're pointing at me and saying that with?
I think that's...
Is that your perspective, or are you illustrating a trope? What are you saying?
I feel like I'm illustrating a trope. I feel like that's a perspective in the U.S. these days, that we should... I mean, you talk about everybody wanting to be upper middle management.
Well, that was the neoliberal dream.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a difficult conversation to talk about, that some people are happy and content to do things in life that other people think they should want to move on from. Like a woman that loves being a server at IHOP.
Yeah.
She gets to see the same people for 30 years.
She has relationships with
She has relationships with them and their children and their grandchildren. And she makes just as much money as she would make if she were a receptionist in a dental office. But we think she ought to want a quote-unquote better job as a society.
Or think that she's not able.
Right, or think that she must be doing that job because she can't do something quote unquote better.
Right, exactly.
We rank careers
with what do you call that? What do you give, like status?
Yeah. Better or worse.
Status categories.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so we're sort of talking about like...
We talked about that on Thursday, the everybody, like every person a king, the idea of the American dream where everybody's a sovereign and a king.
Right.
And that king is such a weird word to use in a country that rebelled against a king and everybody wants to be one now, which doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's the neoliberal myth of
and we literally can't
upper middle management. Everybody's going to be upper middle management? How does that work?
I mean, if you want to talk about it really basically, really blasé, you can't have kings if you don't have civilians.
Yeah, it's kind of
Some people have to be the civilians for the Knights of the Round Table to save. Otherwise, there's no point in being a Knight of the Round Table.
I like living in Los Angeles in the 90s. I used to have a joke about all the kings. It's a city of kings. You had the mattress king and the cell phone king, and they all had billboards. That was the royalty of Los Angeles. The mattress king, the cell phone king, the hot tub king.
Fascinating.
Everybody wanted to be the king of whatever they were doing.
King. Well, Elvis was the king.
He was the king of rock and roll. This guy is like the mattress king. That's like, if you're in Los Angeles and you say, do you know the mattress king? And you're like, yeah, I know the mattress king. Like everybody knows who the mattress king is because he's got billboards all over the place.
Right.
So yeah, Los Angeles is full of, you think of it being the stars, but the actual kings in Los Angeles are giant billboards of people who sell hot tubs and beepers.
Right, beeper.
It was the 90s.
Dating yourself a little bit.
I did adjust and say cell phone to update it, but
right.
The beeper king was a very real thing, and I'm not going to forget his memory.
The beeper king?
Yeah, he was a very real thing, and I'm not going to sully his memory just because cell phones.
Just by updating him.
Yeah.
Kevin Olson says, when we had the Revolutionary War, some people thought we were freeing ourselves from being royalty. Many just thought, gee, now I can be royalty, without that oppressive king. It's difficult to not desire to be in control over others. That's an interesting thing to say, Kevin.
Kinky.
I don't have any desire to be in control over others. I think that might be a personality difference, but that's okay. And the end of Kevin's comment is, there is no mastery worth possessing aside from master over oneself, which is a quote by Albert Pike.
That sounds good to me.
I think, to go back to what we were talking about in the first hour, if everybody was more sovereign over their own kingdoms and doing things that they found to be valuable, we would all be having a better time. Green Days and I were having a side conversation on Twitch where he was talking about who are you going to call bubble jumpers? That's awesome. No, it was 710 and 805. He said it's really hard sometimes for people to choose between manual labor and mental labor. You know, you don't really know which thing you're good at,
Right.
which I kind of thought about for a second. I was like, well, it's especially hard to choose between manual labor and mental labor and what you're good at when excelling in something is defined as financially excelling
Right.
instead of personal fulfillment excelling.
Right. Yeah. That's
I
right.
think it would be a lot easier for everybody to decide what they want to do if they were just supposed to do what made them happy instead of what helped them pay the bills.
Yeah, everything got calcified into dollar signs.
Everything that we do, every decision.
Like our modern reality, I just get this image. You know, they used to have these guns in the grocery stores, the sticker guns.
Oh yeah, ka-chunka.
Yeah, you're like 35 cents, right? So that's what I feel like. That's what.
Anything in the grocery store is 35 cents anymore. Sorry.
$3.50.
Judgy, ageist. Sorry.
That the whole world got ka-chunked.
Yeah.
Like everything suddenly got a sticker price on it.
Who you marry has a dollar sign on it.
That's not the way it's been. That's a new phenomena.
Right.
In the experience of the human animal, is that the whole world got ka-chunked.
Mm-hmm.
And everything has a dollar sign on it. And if your dollar, it's this weird static reality that doesn't allow for the sort of, nature to be all curvy, squishy.
Kevin also pointed out, did you ever notice everything being a first? First National Bank, First Baptist Church,
Right.
First Church of Christ.
Yes.
Yes, first king, best. We were talking a bit about, on Thursday, my muddlings from our conversation with Hanzi, talking about going back in time and how would we describe modern society to a French king in the 1600s. How would we do it? How would we even begin to talk about it in terms that they would understand? And I really was thinking a lot about the food chain. The idea that certain things eat other things and that makes them higher up on the chain. Whatever eats you is better than you. Instead of like whoever is most giving is better than you. Like Christians talked about this concept a lot with whoever is first shall be last and the last shall be first.
Yeah.
Jesus's words were attempting to get people to stop ladder climbing and start helping each other.
Yeah.
And that the more you invest and are helpful and are fulfilling and fulfilled, that is a higher person than just a person that is crawling over everybody else's bodies to get to the top like Yertle the turtle.
Right.
And that the food chain is a human invention, perhaps. Because who's at the top of the food chain? The log or the mushroom?
Mm-hmm.
The bee or the flower?
Right. Yeah, it's not a chain.
I think things are maybe a little bit more
nexus,
symbiotic.
Yeah.
A little bit more like less linear.
Right.
But that's very interesting. Best, first, king, top of the food chain, top of the ladder, like the food pyramid.
I haven't thought about the Beaver King in a long time. I wonder how he's doing.
You're thinking about him a lot right now.
Yeah, it was a big part of my life in LA.
Did you put an angry face on this video again?
Yeah.
Come on, man. Every week. Tammy has had an interesting side conversation going on where she's talking about this new reality. To bring it back to the now.
Coronavirus.
To bring it back to being sovereign in the now.
Oh, yeah. Boy, there's so much to talk about.
That's why it's non-linear.
We talk about bubble realities a lot, and you and I are in our own bubble reality. We are working at the house, we're living in the house, we come here, and then we deal with each other with little digits coming up to tell us
friends.
Little like thin lines to the outside world.
Yeah.
And we're having an experience, right? And there's so many other people having really different experiences right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think it's interesting.
A single person who is enforced social distancing.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
And I mean, we've been told to social distance and our gathering places have been shut down, but we are not shut in our homes. Like in Italy and Spain, people are shut in their homes. You are not allowed to leave your home.
Yeah, we can get out at least.
We can go out. I saw a great picture of KVMF friend of the station, Dick Gibson, drinking beer with friends on the street.
All 6 feet apart.
Yeah, all of them standing 6 feet apart, drinking beer, watching the sunset.
Over there on Court Street.
That's a thing we can all still do.
I was almost motivated to go over there.
I know, I was like, if I'd just seen this sooner. And that's a thing that we can all still do. You can still take hikes with friends.
And get creative with the social distancing.
Yes.
And it might bring us closer together.
Oh. So anyway, she's talking about this new reality and the Embracing the shift is both saddening and scary. Yet there is a spark of excitement because it is a chance to be better.
Right.
And she says that she feels that once I overcome my newfound sadness, I will start to live again. I am quite sure about this.
Yeah, stages of this stuff.
Yeah, there are stages of grief, and this is a catastrophic shift in reality. People are having to acknowledge things being out of their control in great new ways. And it's hard to feel like you're out of control, especially if you already weren't having a very good time.
One thing I'm interested in is what I've been seeing lately about the news feed, and I have a very particular bubble tunnel vision reality news feed because it's the things that I've cultivated from my past attentions and what I've liked and what I've decided to follow and so on and so forth. So there's the political strain, there's the election year and the political strain, and we're in a crisis and our government is failing. That's a big part of the narrative from my stream.
The U.S. government is kind of doing the worst job on the planet.
Government is not handling this. They're not getting 4 stars for this.
No.
So that's part of the narrative. The other part of the narrative is that I'm finding out how badly they're doing because so many other people, individuals and organizations are doing such great things. Like, it really is making their handling of the crisis a little obsolete in that people are just saying, well, we can't, this is not a moment to put faith in government. So this is where we got to step up and start to do things. I like, whatever you think politically, Bernie Sanders is acting like a president right now. He has a platform.
Yeah.
He's like, people are funneling money towards his efforts, so he's like, well, let's just take it and funnel it over here, away from the campaign for a second, and deal with some emergencies. The government is not acting quickly enough.
Like the last 4 days, he raised over $2 million from his campaign followers that got sent to like Meals on Wheels and hunk meals for kids and a bunch of different.
That's so. This is not me saying I'm endorsing the candidate. I'm just saying you just look at the reality of the situation. This is a guy who is saying, I have a platform and a voice, and I'm surrounded by some smart people. Let's make a plan.
I feel like this is the radio show where I bring up a whole bunch of Christian metaphors that I haven't thought about in a really long time that are actually super applicable.
Really?
Yeah, because that's another thing that Jesus told everybody to think about. I mean, if you just read Jesus's words, Christianity is not that whack. It's actually what we're all aiming towards right now.
You didn't give me a trigger warning. You're going to talk about Christianity.
Sorry, man. Trigger warning for religious trauma. I'm feeling a little religious traumatized that it keeps coming up for me so much. I'm like, why do I keep thinking of parables? But that, I mean, that was the language of the first 27 years of my life. I read the Bible hundreds of times.
Totally relevant. All that stuff is relevant. I just don't like their branding.
Yeah, it's kind of nice hearing Jesus' words pop up in my head and being like, yeah, that he said some good things.
On a positive note, yes.
Yeah, he said, you will know a tree by its fruit. A good tree does not bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. And if you are looking, a lot of people are like, I've been having a back and forth conversation with a friend who doesn't like me, quote unquote, hating on Biden.
By basically saying that he's
by telling people to look at his record.
Yeah.
I'm saying I don't want to vote for Biden because I don't like his record.
Right.
He doesn't make choices that I respect or choices that I want for myself or my fellow citizens.
Right.
That's not hatred.
You know what I find really interesting is when you support a candidate. So there's this idea to shut up and get in line and support the candidate because this is the way the train is going because that's what the media is saying. That's my perception of the whole thing.
The media is making people think it's more of a done deal
it's
than
all
it
done.
is.
Better support the guy. It's all over. And it's like no, it runs a course and it's not run the course yet. So stop telling me what to do. That notion of when another presidential candidate drops out of the race, then everybody is on pins and needles. Who are they going to endorse? Who are they going to endorse?
Right.
It's like, where's all that energy going?
Andrew Yang dropped out.
And yet, like, when I say I am not going to endorse this person because I don't agree with it, I'm a criminal for not doing it.
Right.
Like, I'm not, like, when does my endorsement mean something?
It doesn't.
When does your endorsement mean something?
The citizens are not supposed to endorse. We are supposed to follow.
So it's a bit of a classist issue. I get a little grumbly about when people just say fold in line with the party. I'm like, I can't use my person to publicly or effectively endorse somebody whose policies I don't agree with. I
If
don't
my
feel good
vote
about that.
matters, which everybody's yelling at all the young people,
Right.
your vote matters, your vote is powerful. So if my vote matters, then I'm going to use it for somebody whose policies and actions I believe in. Not the things that he's saying right now over the last year and a half or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, but I mean someone where the tree bears good fruit.
Right. So I don't want to go down a whole political rabbit hole.
Right.
But I'm finding that interesting. That's a big part of my life. I like to follow politics
Mm-hmm.
and sort of figure out what's going on and try to tell the story to myself so it makes sense. Seeing it pale in comparison to more vital actions being taken outside of traditional channels. I'm finding that very inspiring.
Right. If you find our sitting president's actions demoralizing or like you're being let down,
Mm-hmm.
there are other people in the country trying to take action.
There's other orders of power too. There are other avenues of action.
Right.
It's interesting. Not to say, like, this is one of those things where we either need to restore some sort of confidence in the folks that we have entrusted to be our government.
Mm-hmm.
They either have to find some way to reinstill trust, or the government can't last through 18 months of this.
Mm-hmm.
It won't last through this.
What do you think that would look like?
Looks like what it looks like right now. Like, we don't have leadership on the higher levels, so leadership down the chain. Governors, mayors, they're stepping up and doing, taking care of their people.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice to have some sort of confidence in the larger order, which would be the federal government, and the people who are making calls there. It would be nice to have confidence in that. I don't have confidence in it. So it's interesting to see how do you remain a good American and criticize the mechanisms of your government. Like, I see, how do you be a good Democrat? If you're a Democrat, how do you be a good Democrat and say, I'm not endorsing a corpse? I can't endorse a corpse. You
had an article that you found earlier today from your Complexity Solutions group that you just joined. We have about 15 minutes left before Daniel and Patty come in for the Sunday Smackdown.
Right.
I'd really like to spend some time in our end of the show talking about solutions from that article that they presented.
Which article?
It was the super intense article about how we need to restructure the government and initiate hammer and dance, whatever that is.
Yeah, let me find that. Boy, I don't know where it went. What was it?
It was from the Complexities group. It was the article that you can't post on Facebook.
Oh, the article that cannot be named.
That's right.
Right.
It's Dark tried to post it, another guy tried to post it, and I tried to post it.
The guy who I was reading from earlier, he tried it, and then he posted the link, but he spelled out dot
as in D-O-T instead of putting the dot, because that was the only way to get it past. Facebook was like, this is going against our community guidelines.
So I'm gonna pull that up right now. Whenever I tried to post it, it just wouldn't. It said no.
This is going against our community guidelines.
So,
which doesn't necessarily mean that it's great information, but anything that Facebook doesn't like, I give a second glance to, because I understand who is controlling Facebook and I understand Facebook's goals. Netflix?
It just took me to Netflix.
What are you talking about?
I don't know what they're doing. Let me try this again. I gotta get rid of the dot.
Yes. Get rid of the dot yourself. And I'll see if we can share this link.
Okay, I got it.
In our group chat, or if it will shut the whole chat down.
You're right. This is from a site called Complexity Everywhere. Their byline is Analyzing Markets, Politics, and Society with Deep Learning and Complex Science.
Oh, baby, Bernie Sanders is live right now with
I know,
and we're missing it.
I know.
Y'all, I don't mind if all of you just go watch Bernie Sanders live.
Hey, come on now. It'll be there later.
That's true.
And so will we. So this is from this Complexity Everywhere post. I'm finding systems management, systems complexity. These are the words that I'm running into this week. People who are looking at systems and how systems work.
If we like an ecosystem.
Right. So I wanted to, let's read through this. We've got the time to do it, and you can stop and say stuff if you want to. The name of this article is The New COVID-19 Base Case Right, the new COVID-19 base case is shutdown, suppression, backstop the entire economy, hammer and dance. That's the name of the article.
Okay.
He's going to explain all those terms.
I'll do my best not to say what does that mean.
So, trying to figure out why this was banned, somebody said, I'm going to read the first, we'll explain it. So the first, this is by Shamir Ahuja on this site called Complexity Everywhere. The disruption caused by this virus is a surprise attack by an enemy. The enemy is invisible and strikes without warning. It snuck across our borders while we celebrated stock market highs and a Kansas City Super Bowl win. So anyway, he's talking about the enemy and he's talking about the virus, and it's a metaphor.
It's a war metaphor.
But people are saying, there's a lot of people who don't get metaphor or irony.
Right.
And so this can read like Alex Jones' page.
The enemy has snuck over our borders, and those people might think the enemy means the Chinese.
The Chinese or whatever. So anyway, I think that might be the reason it's banned. So anyway, that's where we are. So I'll continue on. It says, it is here, this enemy. It is here, not far away on the shores of Normandy or the hills of Okinawa. Let's stop calling it a recession or a depression. Reframing this challenge as a war is a better approach. Our national leaders, many exposed as profiteers, will fumble toward this realization. Once they do, I expect the base case to be these four things that I named. A national shutdown, an embrace of suppression, not social distancing, a backstop of the entire economy, and hammer and dance mitigation.
I can't even post just complexityeverywhere.com.
Right.
In the comments of our live video.
So they've been flagged somehow.
Fascinating.
In tandem, every other part of society will need to also go to a war footing. And he has some bullet points here. Private industry across every sector will dictate production capability, intellectual capital, real estate, and financial capital to fighting the war. Wall Street will open the spigots of lending, backstopped by the Federal Reserve. Disrupted people will find opportunities to repurpose their skills to fight against the enemy. Society will harden itself to make some sacrifice. The kids will sacrifice too, and they will be fine. The Spanish flu of 1918 and the Great Depression produced America's greatest generation. So I'm going to take you through these four things.
Okay.
Or these five things. Step one, a national shutdown. It's time for a 5-week national shutdown. This is what Yanir Bar-Yam says, and if you had listened to him, Joe Norman and Nassim Nicholas Taleb in January, instead of the so-called experts, we wouldn't be here today. They are experts in complex systems theory. Almost everyone else you respect is not. Pandemics are complex systems on steroids. From January 29th, this is a quote from Norman Bar-Yam Taleb, it will cost something to reduce mobility in the short term, but to fail to do so will eventually cost everything. If not from this event, then one in the future. Outbreaks are inevitable, but appropriately precautionary response can mitigate systemic risk to the globe at large. So that's the national shutdown step. Step two, and this is from, I think, today. He's quoting what they said, or at least today compared to January. This has already begun, embrace suppression, not mitigation. This has already begun to happen in the largest population centers of the US. Let's speed up. Read this article from The Atlantic for a full understanding. And so he gives a link to that article. Here is a summary of what they want you to understand. Note, full credit for this list goes to the article writers. I am paraphrasing them.
That's how you do it, children.
1, current social distancing will slow things down by summer. That is good. 2, the current measures almost certainly will bring the virus back with a vengeance in the fall and winter. Like the Spanish flu of 1918, the second wave will be much worse than the first.
Because we won't be trying to stop it?
We'll continue on.
Okay.
3, some are proposing an 18-month lockdown. This will end society as we know it. Others are proposing letting everyone get infected. This will kill millions and then end society as we know it. The authors argue that there is a third way, quoting directly from the article, Suppression refers to a campaign to reduce the infectivity of a pandemic, what experts call RO or R naught. That's R and 0. R0. To less than 1. Unchecked, the R0 of COVID-19 is between 2 and 3, meaning that every infected person infects on average 2 to 3 others. An R0 less than 1 indicates that each infected person results in fewer than 1 new infection. When this happens, the outbreak will slowly grind to a halt. So how do we do suppression? We need to be vigilant and willing to quarantine people with absolute diligence. With that done, then we focus on testing. We could develop tests that are fast, reliable, and ubiquitous.
What does ubiquitous mean?
Everybody can get them. If we regularly screen everyone, we can let most people return to a more normal life. Healthcare facilities, we have to build healthcare facilities that do rapid screening and care for people who are infected apart from those who are not. So we're going to have segregated hospitals. Medical infrastructure, we will need to massively strengthen our medical infrastructure, and we'll need to build ventilators and add hospital beds. These steps will have an incalculable effect on the entire country. So how do we keep society afloat? Step 3, backstop the economy. The government needs to backstop the entire economy. It can do that simply by suspending the economy. And there's a hyperlink there that I imagine where they explain what that means to suspend the economy. Suspend all debts and credits, declare Article 5 of NATO, and do this with G7 or G20. Don't ask people and companies to pay for anything.
This is the most radical one that I remember from our talk this afternoon.
If you don't have to pay anything, you are much less likely to worry about your income. So, allow people not to pay rent, mortgages, internet bills, electric bills, etc. What about the landlords who collect rent? They don't have to pay their mortgages, and so on and so on. As hedge fund manager Bill Ackman said, the country takes a collective spring break. Just don't go to,
Don't go to actual spring break and congregate.
Provide direct cash payments to people who need help procuring food and medicine, so basic necessities, rather than just a blanket $1,000 to everyone. That seems a little like a Band-Aid.
Yeah, well, because different people need different amounts of money.
Exactly. Maintain.
Like my $1,000 in Butte will buy me a lot more groceries than $1,000 for someone in San Francisco.
It doesn't make any sense.
Why did we both think of San Francisco?
Because it's really expensive over there. Maintain essential services such as food, water, electricity, internet, healthcare, safety, and anything that ensures a functioning society. So we're going to go to step 4 now. Hammering and dance to bring people back online. Hammer and dance. So this is a phrase that people are going to have to get familiar with, apparently. Just
Hammer
like
and dance.
Social distancing. Once the above steps are implemented, people can gradually come back online this summer. But governments and people will need to be constantly monitoring themselves and their health. This is the dance part of the strategy. Read some details about it here, and if you agree, sign this petition. So there's, again, this is in the article that can't be named. Or at least hyperlinked. As the Atlantic article says, if we choose the third course, when fall arrives, we will be ahead of a resurgence of the infection. We can keep the number of those who are exposed to a minimum, focusing our attention on those who are infected, and enacting more stringent physical distancing only when and in locations where that fails.
So, just to interject real quick, this third option that's option 1 is
these are not options, these are steps.
Well, no, option 1 is social distance for a long time, and then let everybody out, and then we get the plague again in the fall. Or just don't tell anybody to social distance and let everybody get it, and a bunch of people will die, and then we get the plague again in the fall.
Right.
Or the third option that they're talking about is we need tests for every single being right now, everywhere.
You need to have those like toothpicks.
Like everybody has them. Like I want to go visit Mary Kay Craig. I can take a test and know within 6 hours whether it's okay for me to go have dinner with an immunosuppressed person.
And then you can start isolating the infected communities. There are whole communities that are infected. There are whole communities that are not infected.
Right, because And you can't know this for yourself. And that's the thing that I think is frustrating for civilians, because we want to be like, well, but I'm fine. Why can't I go to the birthday party?
Yeah.
And it's like, you can be carrying the virus for 2 weeks without ever having any symptoms.
Right. So, as this is the very end of the how to bring people back online.
Okay.
We can keep schools and businesses open as much as possible, closing them quickly when suppression fails. Then opening them back up again once the infected are identified and isolated. Instead of playing defense, we can play more offense. Step 5, produce a vaccine. The above steps give us time to find a vaccine. This one's pretty simple. Pour billions into this, someone will get it done.
Yeah.
Byproducts. Better prepared for next time. This will happen again. And what if the mortality rate of the next one may be much higher? Think infectiousness of COVID-19, mortality rate of Ebola. That is game over for the human species. Restored faith in the government. None of this is possible without the hardest thing right now. The federal government needs to reclaim the trust of the American people. This may require new leadership. While speed has increased, Americans entered the weekend with the president lashing out at a reporter asking a normal question about how we would reassure the American public, and stories of potential profiteering by members of Congress and their staffs in the face of confidential briefings. The government has already turned to the private sector for support. For example, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin will be reaching out to Wall Street executives. Other officials have already reached out to retailers, pharmaceutical companies, technology providers, etc. The elite in this country must step up and restore faith in government. They must push for actions that support the common American, not enrich themselves in the process. Only when faith is restored will American accept the shared sacrifices ahead. Shared sacrifice will produce great things. I know many people who have kids. They worry their kids are entering an uncertain life. It's the adults you should worry about. Kids are adaptable. The kids will be fine.
The kids will be all right.
That's right. So that's the general gist. It's a pretty, this new world that I'm moving into, where I'm dealing with people who are very interested in complexity in systems.
Well, what we're trying to do is deal with people who haven't done as much studying as we have.
Yes.
And people who have done more studying
than we have, yes. And so what I'm finding, what I like about this is there's no presupposition, right? They're not saying, but we're all going to get, when a school is infected, then the FEMA camps are going to come, and they're going to put us on railroad cars and cart us off. Like, there's that whole fear because we don't trust the government.
It's
right
like,
now.
Look, teacher went on a vacation, she came home, she took a test, she's infected, she can't teach that class for 2 weeks. Substitute comes in.
Yeah, so I like that. I like the optimism. I like the post-partisanship aspect of it.
No red, blue fighting.
We're going to do a show on Thursday from
4 to 6
from the consulate.
It will still be on Facebook and Twitch. Unfortunately, it will air later at some other time when I send the MP3 to Clark on KBMF. Guys, stay tuned for Dan and Patty and the Sunday Smackdown. Thank you so much, Kevin. You said a great show.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for everybody that participated this afternoon.
Yes.
I wish I could thank you all by name. This has been a sobering subject. I'm going to end the show with some music that I experienced first in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Just to raise all of our spirits.
All right.
And we'll be back again soon. Yeah! Anyway, for those of you, it's Can't Stop This Feeling, Blue Suede or something.
Hello.
What's the matter with you? Something.
Redbone.